Hi everyone, my name is Joshua Malari, and today I will be talking about my favorite movies of 2021. I'll be starting off with some honorable mentions, and then moving on to my 10 favorite movies of the year, and then rounding things off with a couple of catch-up movies that I saw for the first time in 2021 and just wanted to bring to everybody's attention. Hi everyone, Josh from the future here, and I'm here to talk about a couple of disclaimers with the video. First and foremost being the audio quality. I understand that this is the first time I used a lavalier mic, and I thought that I could simply clip it onto my clothes and all the ruffling would magically go away, but that wasn't the case. As you can see right now, I have a better setup using this little palette knife as my mic stand. I think it doubles as both functional and a lot more funny. The second disclaimer that I have is about some of the movies on my top 10 list. I'm going off of wide release date and when they became widely available for everybody to watch, essentially. So you might see a movie that came out in 2020 and it made the list, and you might be thinking, this guy can't fucking count, but that's not the case, even though I haven't taken math in 6 years. But regardless, it's my list, and whatever I say goes. And that's about it. I hope you all enjoy the video. Kicking off our honorable mentions is the movie that I thought was going to be my favorite theater experience, but we'll get to what my favorite theater experience was in a second, and we are going to talk about James Wan's *Malignant*. I did watch this movie kind of drunk, but that's not to say that it detracted from my experience of the movie. As a matter of fact, I think it enhanced it. Next up on my honorable mentions list is a little-known British horror movie that came out last year. Flew under the radar of a lot of people, unless you are a frequent viewer of Red Letter Media or some other channel like that, because they did talk about this movie. It's called Censor, and I believe it's the debut directorial effort from this individual right here. I'm completely blanking on the name, and there's going to be an insert why this fucking green screen is here to make up for all my mistakes. But Censor is a really interesting movie. It's a horror movie, and it's about a interesting time in history and also an interesting job that people used to have in the entertainment industry, censoring video nasties is what they used to be called. They're like gore porn movies. On top of that, there is an interesting through line with the character. It has also probably one of the most stellar endings to a movie. Like, the climax is super stylish. It is really, really well done, and it's a lot of fun. Definitely recommend anybody to check this movie out. The third honorable mention on my list, it's actually pretty fitting that it is at number 3. It's the third one being mentioned, because it is my favorite and most fun theater going experience I had this year, which is Spider-Man No Way Home. And after mentioning that movie, I'm pretty sure I have to cash in my A24 membership card and close my Letterboxd account. But regardless, this is such a fun movie. Like, regardless of what you think about the MCU, regardless of how wacky the premise is and how completely over the top it all is, it was just so much fun to see all these recognizable and famous characters coming together for the big screen, all this crazy hoopla about all the screaming with the multiple Spider-Man, spoilers I guess, but if you're anybody and you don't live under a rock, you probably already fucking watched this movie. And it was just a blast to watch, beginning to end. Yeah. Why am I telling you this? You probably already fucking watched it. And the very last honorable mention that I have on my 2021 list is Denis Villeneuve's Dune. And the fact that this is just an honorable mention knows I'm not fucking around with this top 10 list. Dune is all about the spectacle. This is part 1, so naturally, any emotional character arcs are gonna be left in the fucking air. It's just, it doesn't even really matter. Well, actually, it does matter. I don't know what the hell I'm saying. What I'm trying to get at is that we're not going to see the fully realized arcs of these characters, like Paul Atreides, Zendaya's character. The fucking names are blanking on me once again. We will see how the full product actually turns out this year in October. But for the most part, this part one does a really good job at establishing the world and pulling you in with the intrigue of the political system going on, all the nitty gritty stuff that happens on Arrakis. And I was quite enthralled by it all, even though, like, there wasn't really an emotional connection I had with the characters, other than seeing Paul Atreides go through the motions of, like, the Chosen One journey and whatnot. What it comes down to is how immersive and the scale and how big everything seems to goddamn be in this world. The special effects work is actually is completely stellar. Just like take a look at this worm. That's a big fucking worm. Now that we got all the shit movies out of the way, it's time to talk about the real top 10 movies of 2021 according to me, Joshua Malari, resident shithead movie watcher. Number 10 is going to be The French Dispatch, the new Wes Anderson film. And this is a movie that is essentially Wes Anderson's style on steroids. He's almost acting like a parody of himself, like every single medium that he has dabbled in, all the stylistic choices of complete fucking symmetry, everything's in a box, it looks like a dollhouse. What else is there? Animation, claymation, like a little bit of that is all sprinkled in there. I think it makes for a movie that kind of jerks off, Wes Anderson fans and whatnot. His style is one thing that really attracts audiences. But Wes Anderson has gone on to say that this movie is a love letter to journalism and storytelling, and I think that the movie does a really great job at conveying that message. I myself am someone that likes to use a lot of flowery and extravagant language to enhance stories, and I think that is kind of what Wes Anderson was going for when he was changing like the aspect ratios, the style, the color grading, like what have you, within the stories. Because journalism at the end of the day is just about telling other people's stories. And I really loved this movie for that reason alone. Number 9 on my list of top 10 movies is the new Paul Thomas Anderson movie, Licorice Pizza. While it may not be Paul Thomas Anderson's best work, it's an easygoing movie, and it's something that you could just kind of watch and vibe with, as all the kids are saying. It's a vibe movie. It's all about how the movie makes you feel, man. It's about the ambiance. When I watched it, it was more so a movie that kind of weaponized nostalgia. It's like a movie that is coated in this warm light of yesteryear. Sure, things might have been really good back then, but there's also these little tidbits of character behaviors and the way they interacted with each other that kind of harkens to the idea that maybe things back then weren't as good as you make it out to be in your head. Rose-tinted glasses and whatnot, or whatever expression you would like to use to talk about nostalgia. All the technical aspects are really, really well done. It's a Paul Thomas Anderson movie. What the fuck do you expect? Like, this guy's like a master at his craft. He even made a movie called The Master. I think he's talking about himself. The movie definitely has a heart, but it definitely has a dark side to it, Like, I feel like Paul Thomas Anderson kind of left the pieces out there in the wild, and then the audience is just left to kind of pick it up and interpret it as they will. Sure, it could be taken one way, as just a very simple hangout movie, and it does that really well. But I feel like Paul Thomas Anderson is a bit smarter in his writing and what it is that he wants to convey in his movies. Licorice Pizza, number 8. Give it a watch. Don't eat it, though. I don't think that's a really good combo. So number 8 on my list is a movie that I have to give a quick shout out to my little brother for telling me to watch this movie, because he told me it's one of the most uncomfortable movie experiences he had in a while. And also shout out to HBO Max for actually putting it on there and making it available for a wide audience. And that movie is Shiva Baby, the directorial debut of Emma Seligman. And I don't even really know if it constitutes as like a full feature-length movie. It's only about 78 minutes. The amount of awkward and uncomfortable energy this movie exudes makes it feel like you are there for a lifetime. And you could relate to this because I'm pretty sure everybody has been to a family gathering that they do not want to be a part of at all. Along with the movie being hilarious, and it is marketed as a comedy, there is a lot of influence from horror movies, especially in its editing, cinematography, and the score. It just really ramps up the tension and it retools the idea of a family gathering as just something so horrific, and it is incredibly personal to the director, and it feels like I could, really relate to a different side of culture that I had zero knowledge of. And that's one of the great things about films, is that how transportive it can be when a person that has an idea, a fully fleshed out idea, and wants to bring it to the masses. And I gotta commend Shiva Baby on pretty much all fronts. An excellent, excellent effort. Number 7 on my list. It is a family movie. Something that you can put on at a family gathering. Wow, what a wonderful segue from Shiva Baby this was. And I'm pretty sure everybody will find something to latch onto and really enjoy about it. It is the Rose Glass movie, Saint Maud. It's an A24 horror movie, so I'm pretty sure you could kind of make an assumption of what kind of movie it is, prestige horror, and it's a slow burn, and there were no jump scares. I'm gonna fucking nut, because, like, that's real horror, that's the real fucking deal. Okay, like, the shit posting aside, this is actually a very excellent movie about loneliness and being a bit out of step with society, and you have nobody to relate to, and you just feel like you are all alone in the world, and it drives you insane. It is such an unsettling movie. Like, the sound design, there are certain segments, if you've watched this movie, you understand what I'm talking about. It involves a lot of breathing and some minor sexual tension with the titular character. Not only that, not only is it scary given the subject matter, the story, and the themes of Saint Maud, it's also kind of depressing in, like, how far this character goes throughout the movie. And I talked about how Censor had an excellent ending. This ending really just, it kind of like shook me. Shivers down my spine, It involves a hard cut to black. It's just so abrupt. Like, this is it. That's the movie. It's very definitive. It's shocking. And yeah, that's how it made me feel, Eyes wide open, I guess. Go watch it. Number 6 on my top 10 list of 2021 is the latest effort from French director Julia Ducournau, Titan, or Titan, or whatever the dictionary pronunciation says. It'll be right here. Don't worry. I'll move my hand out of the way. So you too could actually pronounce this film properly.
Titan.
Titan is a really audacious movie. It is the winner of the Palme d'Or last year. It didn't get a place in the Oscar shortlist for Best Foreign Film, which further proves that the Oscars are completely fucking meaningless. While the movie's premise is so unbelievable, like, you read it on Wikipedia and it doesn't even sound like a real movie. It's like a parody or something. And I think that's what's interesting about the movie, is that it uses this premise that is instilled, it's rooted in body horror, and it uses it as a jumping off point to actually talk about something that is really forward thinking and thoughtful and actually full of heart. Surprising to find that in a movie where a woman has sex with a car and gets impregnated by it. Just going off of that detail, that's just the main premise. It's not really spoilers. You might think that because she gets impregnated by a car, this is like some weird advertisement for Hot Wheels or something, kind of like how people thought the Lego movie was going to be a overly heavy-handed advertisement to go buy Legos. Like, this isn't telling you to go buy a Transformer or something. Hot Wheels' motto is beat that. And by the end of the movie, the only thing that's left beating is is your heart. And that sounded really fucking corny, but for real though, at the end of the day, Titan really tackles some heavy themes of finding your place in the world, identity. Identity is a huge one. And showing unrequited love for someone that might not be the same as the last time you saw them. And how accepting you are of that new person. It's phenomenal. It's probably the movie that I've thought about the most in 2021. And I think everybody should go watch it. It's just trigger warning. She does get it on with a car. So now we're moving to the top 5 movies of 2021, and we are really getting to some heavy hitters. And while this next movie isn't the forward thinking, genre bending piece of work that Titan was, this is more so a palate cleanser just in case you were watching the movies in the order that I happen to lay them out in. That movie is Minari by Lee Isaac Chung. Now, Minari is a semi autobiographical movie about Lee Isaac Chung's upbringing and how he came to America and his family just trying to strike gold in the land of opportunity and trying to provide for, their own family and trying to like keep everything together and trying to really make a sustainable living in the world. If anything, the movie's just, I guess, there's the idea that there are do nothing movies, hangout movies, vibe movies like Licorice Pizza and whatnot. But I think this is that type of movie in the most simple and pure form. It is just an extremely well made, well shot, completely excellently acted. Like, come on, you got like Steven Yeun here, after he got his head beaten by a baseball bat. I'm so glad that happened because not only did I stop watching The Walking Dead, but I was able to follow his career into all these other interesting fucking movies that he's been doing. Not only that though, we got such a pure and wonderful child acting performance from Alan Kim. What the movie bolsters definitely is how much heart and how much personality and how much, life is injected into the movie thanks to Lee Isaac Chung's directing and everybody who brought their A game to really make a movie that it feels like everybody had a stake in. Like everybody who was attached to the movie like saw themselves in their roles and in the world that was created. It is such a pleasant movie. It's pretty blissful, and it really makes you want to call up your family and tell them how much you love them by the time the credits roll. I'm making an exception to my number 4 spot, because I'm fairly certain that to the general masses, this isn't really considered a movie. It's an experience, to say the least, but given how much effort was put into the writing, directing, cinematography, like every single aspect that you would consider that would go into making a movie is present here. I gotta give it a shout out. I gotta give it a lot of props for being the next evolution in stand-up comedy. And I'm talking about Bo Burnham's Inside. Now, I've been following Bo Burnham's career ever since he first blew up on YouTube, being the local white boy rapping in his room, talking about math and talking about how he could spit fire because he blew a demon, like, all the typical gross out humor that he's been doing. Gross out but clever. His stand-up specials have always been at the forefront, at the cutting edge of what you could possibly do in a live performance because it mixed the ideas of like a concert going experience and like his sharp witty comedy all into one like coherent piece of media. He had his directorial debut with 8th Grade, which is a movie that I thought was really, really great. Inside is just a whole other beast. Like, there's nothing like it currently, like, I could imagine. Because not only is it a really, really funny and it totally, like, fits at home with Bo Burnham's other specials, there's, like, a narrative through line, an arc that happens throughout the special that touches on the ideas of the isolation, quarantine, like staying inside. That's pretty obvious given the title of this special. But it also a character study of Bo Burnham like a person. And he has songs that may seem really random, like the Jeff Bezos song and whatnot. They're just like, topical humor about things that are happening in the world. But then he dives headfirst into having an existential crisis about being inside for so long, because not only is he confined in his room and his house, he's trapped inside of his own mind. And this movie, I'm gonna call it a movie, gives us a peek at what goes on in his head. And it's funny, it's depressing, it has some of the most catchy music that came out last year. Yeah, Inside. So a few years back, we were blessed with the Joker movie. And while I do see it as being completely carried by Joaquin Phoenix's performance as Arthur Fleck, it leaves people wondering, oh, what could he possibly do next? And like, this is such a deviation from some of his other roles. Like, he really had to go out and be, extravagant in this role. So naturally, the next movie that he will be a part of is about Joaquin Phoenix playing a soft spoken, apathetic radio talk show host and producer. And that movie is Mike Mills' Come On, Come On. So Come On, Come On is a drama, black and white drama, about Joaquin Phoenix's character and how he's tasked to babysit his nephew while his nephew's mom is out handling like a family emergency. It's a movie about these two people that are completely polar opposites learning a new perspective on the world because they're hanging out with each other. If anything, it sounds like the movie Are We There Yet with Ice Cube, where he learns how to love kids and be a family man after being a hardcore baller who sells baseball cards for a living and decks out his Escalade with spinning rims. Now, where the two movies really deviate, it's not in the comedy, because, to be honest, Are We There Yet definitely has the leg up in that department. But it's how Mike Mills uses filmmaking to further push along the story and the themes of Come On, Come On. And how the movie is about perspective, and it's about seeing the world in a new lens. It's presented in black and white photography, and from my interpretation of the movie, the black and white photography represents the world perspective of a little kid, of like the youth of America, because that's actually another pretty big part of the movie. Joaquin Phoenix's character is going around America interviewing like young adults, teenagers, on their thoughts of life, the world, and how things are looking for the future. But the only thing is that like he doesn't get the perspective of an 8-year-old. And that's where his nephew, played by Woody Norman, comes into play. And how this sense of childlike wonder and seeing things in a very black and white lens like lends itself to helping Joaquin Phoenix take some emotional inventory check on himself and to really retool his perspective on the world. It's such a sweet and incidental movie. Like, the movie really feels like Mike Mills just set up a camera and just walked around and filmed these two walking through the streets of New York and just being together and hanging out. Now this is a hangout movie. This is a vibe movie. I gotta give it props for actually like making me feel so relaxed and just happy watching it, and it actually allowed this cold, black, dead beating heart to have some life once again. And I did mention earlier that Alan Kim had a stellar performance as a child actor. I gotta give it to Woody Norman. Never seen him in anything. I'm pretty sure this was his debut film. Maybe it is. I gotta do my research on that, but amazing. He did an amazing job. I can't believe that you can get a performance out of a kid that good. Half the time I look at a kid, I just want to, you know? But this movie makes me rethink that. It's a new perspective. Everybody should go watch it. There's something wonderful about watching an actor who can be considered a laughingstock in the industry. Think your Adam Sandler's, Robert Pattinson at some point, and most definitely Nicolas Cage. And if anything, what these actors are missing is the right material to work with. You have Adam Sandler doing things like Punch Drunk Love, Uncut Gems, Robert Pattinson doing The Lighthouse, Good Time. Like, you just need to really know how to use their acting skills to the fullest. And Nicolas Cage is no exception, because you may get wonderful little movies like Vampire's Kiss or Gone in 60 Seconds, you know, like some of my favorite movies of all time. But then again, you might stumble upon a movie like Mandy, where the movie itself is there to enhance the crazy factor, the craziness that Nicolas Cage can naturally bring onto a project. Now, what happens if you try to reel him back and try to get him to be quiet for once? You get my number 2 entry on my list, Michael Sarnowski's Pig. Now, I know when the trailer first dropped for this movie, everybody was kind of clowning on it. They're like, Nicolas Cage is looking for a pig. All he says is, "Have you seen my pig?" And it's kind of shot, cut, and presented in a way that makes it seem like it's some type of like John Wick movie, where instead of taking revenge on a dog, he's taking revenge for his missing pig. Now, I think the fact that it got sold to the general masses in that way actually proves to be in its benefit. Pig isn't a revenge movie. As a matter of fact, I'd consider it like an anti-revenge movie, because while he is wronged, while Nicolas Cage is in the right in this movie, he doesn't go about exacting revenge in a violent manner. What the movie is actually about is it's about grief and moving on and forgiveness. And it is such a subversion of expectations. Like, you know, not the Ryan Johnson type of way, like you're not gonna piss off 500 million people for changing little things here and there. But this is really a movie where you think it's going one way, and the movie definitely leads you on with some really strange sequence of events, but it's used as a means of world building and like trying to sell this career path that Nicolas Cage used to be on. I think it's all done in such a like methodical and slow burn type of way. Like you're just inching towards like what it is that like the movie is actually trying to get at, the point that it's trying to get across. When all the pieces finally fall into place, my heart sank because I finally figured it out. It clicked. And this movie is one of the biggest surprises. I knew nothing about this movie. It came out of nowhere, and all I heard was that people were saying that it's a masterpiece and it's going to be lauded as Nicolas Cage's best work. I do believe that it's going to be top tier, you know, right under National Treasure for Nicolas Cage's filmography. But it really shows a side of him that I don't think I've really seen in a movie. So if you want a movie that definitely does something different and it doesn't really follow a plan, a tried and true formula, and you just want to see Nicolas Cage be in something that is genuinely fantastic, I'd say give Pig a shot. Now that we made it to the number 1 entry on my top 10 list, I believe now's a better time than any for a costume change. Much better. Much more comfortable now. My number 1 movie of 2021 is Fast and Furious 9. Man, this is a series that just doesn't know when to quit. It's got no signs of stopping. Like, think about it.
What the fuck is this?
Last movie, we were fighting a submarine.
I know what this is. This is for the real top 10 list that comes out next week. Let me just push this aside, you know, let me just get that out of the way. Now that we got whatever that was out of the way, I could talk about my actual favorite movie of 2021. And that movie is David Lowery's The Green Knight. Man, I was actually hoping that I would love this movie because I do have this sweatshirt, you know, like I got this, I ordered it before I even saw the movie because I just thought it looked really cool. I needed a reason to justify the extremely high price tag for A24 merch. And thank goodness that at the end of the day, it's pretty damn good. Now, I do have a bias for the experience I had with this movie, because I did see it for my birthday, and I did bring a handful of friends with me who had zero idea what the fuck was even going on with this movie. And I myself was struggling with like trying to put the pieces together because the series of events just seems so haphazardly slapped together. It seems nonsensical in a sense. Unless you're familiar with the original tale of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Regardless of my prior knowledge of ancient Arthurian folk tales, I still found the movie to be incredibly enthralling for its reinterpretation of the original folk tale, the ideas of, knighthood, chivalry, and what it is to be a decent man. Because there is a line in the movie, Alicia Vikander tells Dev Patel, why be a great man? Isn't being a good man enough? Like, isn't it enough just to be good? I really like what they did with the ideas of holding people up on a pedestal, chasing after glory, when in reality, at the end of the day, what people should be is just a genuinely good person. Now, on a solely technical level, this movie is completely transfixed on sending you back to the Dark Ages, where everything is horse-drawn. It takes you back to the first Christmas. God damn it. This is my new favorite Christmas movie, because the movie starts off with the birth of Christ, and the bed that the titular Green Knight has for King Arthur and his Knights at the Round Table is a Christmas game. So, you know what? People that keep on spouting off all this old-ass joke that Die Hard is the best Christmas movie ever, or like, we got Hallmark channels with the same 10 white people in the same red and green sweaters as being their favorite holiday movie. No, this goes at the very tippy top of my favorite holiday movies. Right above Are We There Yet? And The Thing. So all that joking aside, the movie is like one large puzzle box of symbolism, subtext, and trying to really, really put the pieces together. It's like someone gave you a 9x9 Rubik's Cube and they fucking broke it with a hammer. And all the pieces just went flying. And they also colored in all the squares black. So it almost seems impossible to try and make heads or tails of this movie. But really, there is like something to get out of it. It's very interpretive of like each and every person. All the people that I went to go see this movie with, they all have different like takes on what each of the symbols in Gawain's journey meant. What it meant to him, what it meant to them, what it meant in the grand scheme of everything that was happening. And sure, like, there are some like little things that happen that are kind of weird. Like, I had a friend tell me that we get Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2 by the end of the movie. If you've seen The Green Knight, then you kind of know what that means. But I think regardless of all the jokes and whether or not you do get lost in the sauce of what the movie's presenting you, and I'm not talking about Dev Patel sauce, it's a funny joke for people that have actually seen this movie. I think it all came together to make a really enthralling fantasy epic. A really well thought out story, and a new take on the ideas of doing what it is that you have to do versus doing what it is that like what other people tell you to do. It's all about being your own person. It's really a coming of age story at the end of the day. And that's why The Green Knight is my favorite movie of 2021.
The first movie on my catch-up list that I would like to mention is actually the debut movie from Julia Ducournau, Raw. Much like Titan, and how it is a horror movie that ends up being about a bigger idea, as like, it's not just about the viscera, it's not just about the shock. Raw is a movie that uses cannibalism as a springboard, a jumping off point to talk about family bond, to talk about growing pains, to talk about having an identity for yourself, and like, again, like, this is stuff that is again delved into in Titan, but like, this is through the lens of a sibling rivalry and how this weird connective tissue this habit of eating other human beings simultaneously brings the family together, but simultaneously tears them apart. It is a fantastic movie. I adore this movie. It is really great debut effort. I don't know how many times I've said that this video. I'm pretty sure this is like the 9th time I mentioned it. The acting, the score, like the shocks. Like there are some really, really like shocking moments. I gotta find a new word for that. I'm gonna throw that up here. A synonym for shocking, right here. Now that I'm gonna use it, and everybody else at home could probably use it also. But yeah, Raw is on Netflix. It's currently streaming on Netflix. And everybody should go watch it. It's a pleasant time. For this next movie, I'm gonna say it again. I watched another debut effort. I know. I'm gonna put a tally right here. How many times I actually said the words debut effort, and editor Josh will rank like how much of a bumbling idiot I am for not coming up with another phrase for for that expression. But this movie that I watched is David Lynch's Eraserhead. This is the first time I've seen it. I know about like the general premise of the movie. I know about the Eraserhead baby, and I kind of had it spoiled like what the movie is about, but I haven't seen it from beginning to end. And after I watched the movie, I looked more into like the production of the movie and the absolute fucking nightmare it was to make this movie, because it was like 5 years and David Lynch forced Jack Nance to have that wacky ass haircut for the entire 5 years. I think it kind of shows in the movie. Everybody seems to be so miserable. The movie itself is very miserable. It's really sad and depressing. Granted, it's kind of like a one-note track where like the idea of the movie, the theme, that's its selling point. It's like it doesn't really go further beyond that, but it hones in on this one idea and it kind of just rides it all the way to the finish line. The movie is paced to be really, really methodical and slow. I believe it's only an hour and 30 minutes, but because of like this droning sense of like impending doom and dread, you feel like you're there for like 5 years. You feel like you are Jack Nance in that situation, dealing with this crazy motherfucker who demands you not watch his movies on a phone, and he will probably come to your door with a gun if you watch Twin Peaks on like a Game Boy Advance. But, you know, at the end of the day, I was really enthralled by the movie, and I was left feeling really empty and depressed by the time the credits finally started rolling. It's on HBO Max, and I'd say give it a shot, especially if you're into this type of weird media like I am. Now for my next catch-up movie, it's actually my first experience with this director. Probably one of China's most prolific directors, well-known and critically lauded, Wong Kar-wai. And you might be thinking, how was this guy never seen In the Mood for Love? This guy's talking out of his ass about how much he loves movies, yet he hasn't seen In the Mood for Love. Plot twist, I still haven't seen it. What I did watch is Fallen Angels by Wong Kar-wai. I don't think this is a movie that is that much talked about in that, you know, in the filmosphere than, let's say, Wong Kar-wai's other movies, Chungking Express, In the Mood for Love. But there was something so captivating about Fallen Angels. It's kind of like Come On, Come On, where a lot of the interactions between the characters seem like a happenstance. Like they just so coincidentally cross paths within this scenario, and it leads to introspection and it leads to reflection. That's what I feel like the movie is all about. It's called Fallen Angels because we follow what's essentially a group of delinquents, and they're like night walkers where they do not really have a place in the world, in the conventional world. Like we follow a hitman and this mute individual who turns out to be like the main character of the movie. All he wants to do is talk and interact with people, but according to the character in the movie, he ate some bad pineapple and then he became mute. And he's the most thoughtful character, but he can't get that out into the world. Like he can't tell this girl that he meets how much he loved her and stuff like that, and like we just have to experience it all just through his actions. We take this random group of individuals that have nothing in common. They learn so much about themselves and their place in the world just by passing by each other on like the subway. And not only that, Fallen Angels bolsters some really, really killer visuals, like visual storytelling. Like you can really feel the seedy underbelly of Hong Kong, like through this movie. It's like the night markets and like the sound design of like just the general ambiance of the city. It's all very, very immersive, and it complements the ideas of like this is the other half of the town that lives, like, you know, two halves of yin and yang. Maybe it's like light and dark, and then this is kind of like the dark side, and you walk through the streets and you follow these people randomly along. As a whole, I am very appreciative of the movie in how it kind of puts importance in the random interactions that you have with anybody just on a given day, how important it can be. It really gets you thinking about like, has that ever happened to me? Has there ever been just some random schmuck, maybe the guy making my $5 footlong at Subway, really changed my life? Sure, it might not be that extreme, but you know, it kind of makes you appreciate the little things. So you know how a few minutes ago I claimed that this movie, The Green Knight, was my favorite movie of 2021? That's still true in terms of movies that came out in 2021. But really, the best movie, my favorite movie, that I watched in the entirety of 2021 is Nobuhiko Obayashi's House, or Hausu, if you want to call it by its katakana name. Obayashi's House is indescribable. You cannot really put it into words other than like maybe you watch it and you get the same reaction as Tim Allen does in Home Improvement, where it's like, oh, I don't know. And I feel like the movie is like, it's meant to do that. It's meant to elicit that type of emotion. Because on first watch, I was already blown away with how different the movie is. I've never seen anything like this. It's like a mix of weird low-budget TV commercial and highbrow, like, artsy-fartsy horror movie, and then comedy, like slapstick comedy. It's like they took all these elements and they threw it in a blender, and then they didn't even put the cap on. The shit just went everywhere. It's a huge fucking mess. But like with a lot of movies that I watch that may seem to be nonsensical, not have a purpose, like it's just stuff for the sake of stuff, you could take this movie as that because it is an experience. I don't think many people have seen anything like this. And just for that alone, for the fun factor of it being such a ridiculous movie, it does have its merits. But knowing the backstory and knowing Obayashi's process for making this movie and how important it was to him, I think it adds an even deeper, more appreciative layer. It's like 7-layer bean dip, you know? You got your fucking beans at the top, you got some guacamole, you got your fucking jello here, I don't know. I've never made 7-layer dip, I don't know what the hell goes in it. But the movie is kind of like that. Hausu is probably the movie that I've rewatched the most in 2021. I watched it for the first time in around March, and then a week later, I went and watched it again. And then I showed my friends the movie, and that was the third time I watched it. And I just feel like I got more and more out of it with each viewing. Like, there's this sense of despair, loss, grieving, family, what makes a house, like what makes a house a home. That's the very last song that they play in this movie. And there's just all these little bits and pieces that start poking their head out under the facade of wacky movie where a bunch of schoolgirls get terrorized by supernatural forces in a house, and one girl even gets eaten by a piano. Like, bring that up, put that visual right here. And this is the scene that like everybody knows from the movie, but I feel like there's so much more to it. There's so much more heart, there's so much creativity put into it. I love everything about this movie, and it's the only movie that I watched last year that I gave a 10 out of 10 to. It's one of my new favorite movies, and I absolutely adore it. It's on HBO Max. Everybody should go watch this movie, just for the experience, and maybe you could also get something out of it too, just like I did. I gotta go cut it right here. Otherwise, I'm gonna just drone on and on and on and on about how much this movie really, really affected me. And yeah, that's House. Please watch it. Shout out to Obayashi, may he rest in peace. And that just about wraps up my 2021 list. Honorable mentions, my favorite movies, and even some catch-up movies that I hope everybody might even like seek out to like watch one of these movies that I mentioned. Like support the filmmakers, support the films, except maybe Spider-Man, because we already know that made like $10 billion in the box office, and it doesn't need some random schmuck like me to tell you to go watch it, because you probably already did watch it. And if for some reason you want to hear me talk about movies I didn't like, you could get that and more over on the Coworkers podcast, which is the YouTube channel that this video will probably be a part of. Also, I would like to give a shout out to the companion to this to this video. My co-host Reagan is making his own top 10 list, so please go and check out that list somewhere over here. You know, I'm gonna put a link maybe over my face somewhere, yada yada yada. Maybe the camera's gonna follow this. Ooh, where's it going? Thank you everybody that decided to sit down and listen to me ramble about my favorite movies of the year. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, subscribe to my Patreon, find me on LinkedIn, and maybe Christian Mingle. Oh, also our Instagram, @Coworkers Podcast, that is the handle. And if you are a fan of the wacky visuals, like the movie posters that were a part of this top movie list, you can get more artistic content of mine at my Instagram, @Hakafufe. That just about wraps it up. I'm Josh. Have a wonderful night.